Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's really, episode of Between Two Keepstars. I am your host, Riker, and yeah, a lot has happened. So, right now, I don't actually have any guests, but they will be joining because currently there is a fleet going on, or multiple fleets going on, where Pappy is essentially trying to take over the Helm's Deep eye hubs. Now, normally I would say there's this big fight going on, but there really isn't. Goons pretty much decided to not show up. Currently, two iHubs remain, and yeah, they are committed to holding that pigeon right now because they are pretty much letting the entirety of Delve burn down all around them. But you know what? If it gets them more Titan kills, more power to them. So, a lot has happened since this show last aired, which honestly at this point it's actually pretty on par with how this war has been. So the first thing we're going to talk about is there was a massive dread fight in MTech MTech 2 or M2 TAC, and this I'm not referring to the Pappy breakout, where essentially Imperium ended up losing 298 billion to Pappy's 128 bill, which is great because Pappy's taking dread fights and winning. Uh, Pappy also anchored a ton of Fortizars. These Fortizars, located in M2 TAC, are basically have been used as stagings for various fleets, various jump-in points, which is honestly probably what Pappy should have done when they were attacking the Keepstar, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so yeah, Pappy is cancer. Well, Pappy members say the same thing about goons, so what can you do? So this I'm actually pretty happy. Oh, so I'm gonna dive into this a little bit. The anchoring of one, anchoring the Fortizars around on the Keepstar grid is actually really what they need to do. Um, what they've been many foremost to try and defend these Fortizars, but instead of actually like going on the Fortizar grid, what Pappy has done in order to defend them is actually shoot bubbles. Now this I think is a really good strategy because it has basically allowed Pappy to sort of take the focus off of these Fortizars that are anchoring in M2 TAC and keep the goons sort of focused on like, hey, we need to stop them from killing these bubbles or else they're going to get more of their supers out, and they do not want that. We've seen it time and time again. They goons have shown, especially over these past few weeks, that they are more than happy to let everything else burn down before they let go of only 100 supers now. Originally, it was like 300 supers, but after recent events where Pappy was actually able to get out many of its dreads, well, not just dreads, but many of its titans, even like I think they roughly got out like half their supers and titans. Yeah, so roughly half of their supers and titans. Goons still continue the Hell Camp, which at this point you gotta wonder like how fun is it to just sit in M2 TAC and actually like I get it. Hell camping is fun. But goons have been hell camping for how many weeks now? Like I want to say 5, 4 or 5. Because the hell camp started in I want to say it started in the beginning of January. 1 month is 4 weeks, and then we're a week out. Well, it's been a week in February, so yeah, about 5 weeks. But yeah, I like a hell camp as much as the next guy, but 5 weeks of just sitting in M2 waiting for Pappy to do something and shooting them whenever they come in and watching the space all around me burn. I mean, me personally, I feel like that's not in a good situation. But you see, that's the thing though. Like, goons have been almost forced into a position where they kind of need to do that because if they don't, then they let all their supers, then they let all the Pappy supers get out. Well, okay. To put it into perspective, goons have gotten themselves into a situation where they almost sort of need to continue camping M2 because let's. I'm gonna throw out this a hypothetical. If they were to say, take down the Hell Camp, let all the supers get, let all the supers and Titans get out, then essentially they spent a month, let a ton of Sov burn down and structures burn down, only to let the supers go. Now, granted, on the Pappy side, we spent a month trying to devise a strategy that involved dropping a metric fuck ton of dreads at 0, and then proceeding to feed said dreads to get our Titans out. Which, I mean, it worked. Bravo. But I, I, I still don't know, me personally, know why it took like a month to do something like that. But like this war so far, a lot of people talk about how much Villy is fucked up, and a lot of people have say, oh, how much goons have fucked up during the war. But in actuality, it just feels like everybody's fucking up. Like, yeah, M2 attack was a monumental fuck up, but okay. It feels like goons are making a lot of little mistakes, but then when Pappy makes mistakes, they're like really big mistakes, but Pappy doesn't make that many mistakes, I guess. So I don't know. It's just what it feels like. I could be totally wrong, which I mean has happened before, so I'm not gonna say that I'm always right. Another thing that happened. Oh, so this was actually kind of interesting. Was that Pappy actually decided like, hey, you know what? We're gonna anchor another Fortizar and we're gonna do it in 1DQ. This I remember being on comms and hearing this happen, and oh yeah, that I thought that was pretty funny. This I forget when this was because it was so long ago. This is what happens when I do shows every like 2 to 3 weeks. Like I'll forget when shit happens, and if I didn't have this notebook, I would personally forget half the stuff that happened. Which I'm pretty sure this notebook's only filled with half the stuff that happened anyway. So yeah, Pappy anchored a Fortizar in 1DQ1, uh, with the probably with the intent of using it as a staging, and it finished its first anchor timer. No sweat, mainly because they did it during a strat up. Which so one of the things that Pappy has really started doing, which I honestly think is what they should have been doing like a long time ago, is well, it is something they've been doing, but I'm glad to see that they're actually doing it, is hitting multiple objectives at once. This was something we saw, especially like almost the very first day of the war when goons went through and pretty much reinforced a ton of iHubs in test space, but then they never followed up with them. See, the thing that Pappy is doing is they're actually following up with multiple objectives. And so now you've got a situation where like there's multiple where Pappy is doing what it needs to do. Also, Rain, thank you for reminding me. By the way, guys, there's a challenge right now that Trash Talk Tuesday is sponsoring, where essentially, if you donate your points, your channel points, to the goal of Webcam Trash Talk Tuesday, then we're gonna get a Webcam Trash Talk Tuesday. So yeah, if you've got points, please do that. After this stream, I'm gonna be donating my points, even though I spent most of them timing people out. But yeah, god dang it. See, that I've totally lost track of what I'm talking about. Oh, the Pappy strategy. So yeah, Pappy's current strategy, which is honestly something they should have been doing, and are doing, is hitting multiple objectives and following up on multiple objectives. It kind of feels it feels a lot like Pappy has definitely learned from the whole M2 fuck up. Whereas instead of like, hey, we've got these big massive fleets that we're just gonna dick swing with, to okay, we've got a bunch of little fleets, basically hitting goons everywhere. Meanwhile, goons are still like, holding the pigeon and trying to keep those supers trapped, which, like I said at the beginning of the show, like, good for them. Like, keep those supers trapped. We'll just keep burning down the rest of your space behind you. Like, let's look at Helm's Deep, for example. Like, Helm's Deep is literally losing all of its iHubs right now, and goons are pretty much nowhere to be found. Well, okay, no, that's not true. They're in M2. And yeah, I don't know. Which, by the way, it would be a whole lot easier if I had someone with me. So, yeah, what was I talking about? Oh, I was going off on a rant about Pappy. So yeah, Fortizar there was a Fortizar attempt to be. Pappy attempted to anchor Fortizar in 1DQ. This, however, didn't work because I personally didn't think it was going to work. Nah, it's fine, Dex. So just for a little bit of behind the scenes, I had actually arranged a guest a little bit ago, well, like a week ago, and I had done everything and sent him what I needed to, and he was actually writing material. But then I think something happened to where when I messaged him, it was like I basically didn't get anything back. And so 5 minutes before the show started, I messaged Dex. I'm like, hey, I know this is super short notice, but can you come on today? Because yeah. Thank God I had a ton of material that I was able to go over. But yeah, so the Fortizar, it died, which, everybody was kind of expecting it to happen, and Pappy didn't exactly fight over it, because what had happened is Goons had all their carriers in 1DQ, and then basically boated all of their fighters over to the T5Z I gate, and since it was also Sino jammed, it made it to where Pappy wasn't just, like, if Pappy jumps in, they get their ass handed to them by fighters. Now, what Pappy could have done, but I don't think they wanted to do this, was if they really wanted the timer, what they probably could have done is they could have gone around the T5ZI gate, maybe somehow gone over to the other side of 1DQ, went through there, and come through another gate. Why Pappy didn't do that, I have no idea. Probably because it just wasn't worth it, because it seems like what Pappy will do is part of the reason why they're going for so many objectives at once is mainly because I don't think they expect to get them all. I think they just want to get at least like as many as they can, essentially. Because the idea with going for multiple objectives at once is to basically force your enemy to choose what they want to do. So, because no matter what, if Pappy gets at least one objective, like they win an objective. Like, that's what they're doing. So it's technically a victory for them if they win at least one objective. Whereas, in order for Goons to have an objective victory, they need to stop all of them. So, which, now granted, you could argue to where, yeah, enemy is just choosing M2 over, it's a breakout, holy fuck. So, that's funny. So, speaking of what Redline's saying, one thing Pappy has also been doing is I feel like Pappy's been throwing a lot of red herrings, which is essentially, yeah, that's pretty much what Goons would say. So basically what Pappy would do is they would go into M2 and start shooting bubbles. This would cause Goons to basically go into an, oh my god, they're attempting to break out, and immediately get all their guys to M2. Now, our response to that we would just nope the fuck out and leave. I mean, because let's be real, like Pappy, like I think a lot of people in Pappy are like, yeah, no, we're not gonna get all of our supers out at once, but if we literally show up every single night and shoot bubbles, which is pretty much what we did during those 30 days, like I think it was something ridiculous. There was one of my court members that I think he got something like 700 kills during the month of January, and like 500 of those were bubbles. So yeah, no, it's a lot of bubbles. Which, God, which speaking of bubbles, yeah, 300 bubbles, well, 500 dead bubbles. I know like I know that someone said, and I'm not gonna say who because I just I'm not gonna say it. But someone said that, hey, listen, oh my God, you're killing bubbles. Well, we've got a ton of bubbles. Well, yes, killing one bubble isn't really gonna hurt you, but if you're killing like hundreds of them every few days, like as someone who actually bought a shit ton of bubbles, like that shit adds up. Like, granted, it adds up much slower than spaceships and all the dreads that goons have been feeding, which honestly, like, I would be happier that goons are feeding dreads if Pappy literally didn't feed like their entire dread fleet just to get out our supers. Um, but yeah, we're Pappy's making up for all the dreads they lost. Let's just say. Um, God, I need to stop going on rants. So yeah, no, it's funny because I've been this entire time I've been trying to like talk about the whole shit that happened in 1DQ, and I just keep ranting. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this off and say basically what happened in 1DQ was that Goon sent a fuck ton of fighters. We didn't go in, and that was the end of that, and we lost the Fortizar. But I think we won a couple other objectives. I really have no idea. I was really only focused on the Fortizar. Um, Actually, I don't even think we formed. I think we formed and then we just deformed. So in that instance, calling Pappy Paspy would work because we did 100% pass on that one. Uh, Another thing that happened this month, well, something I don't know. Yeah, another thing that happened recently was the snuffed out versus Sixth Empire situation. I was thinking about covering this on the last episode, but I didn't really have a lot of the information. Did audio die? Yeah, the audio's working. Anyway, I probably shouldn't have said anything. So the biggest thing that was being talked about was the snuffed out versus Sixth Empire situation. So basically, the situation there was snuffed out wanting to be the bad guys decided that, hey, we're gonna go blow up a bunch of stuff from Sixth Empire, which I mean, it was gonna happen anyway. Like it's a low set Keepstar. Like it's gonna die anyway. So yeah, there was a big thing on that. Snuff. So the whole story is that apparently back in November, Snuffbox or Snuffed Out. I don't know. Snuff made a meme video, basically accusing. I think it was accusing Sixth Empire of basically stealing that Keepstar or Sotio. I don't know. It's one of the two. And essentially, uh, Sixth Empire was like, "Oh my God, we need to figure this out," and tried to contact them. But of course, Snuffed Out didn't say anything or attempt to remedy the situation diplomatically because like it was a troll. Like, yeah, it like essentially if Snuff were then to reach out to Sixth Empire and wait, if Snuff were to respond to Sixth Empire, what would they say? They would say that like, yeah, no, I know you said that I know we said that you stole a Keepstar from us, but in actuality you didn't because we were just memeing and we're gonna come kill it anyway. Like I feel like that would be the entirety of the whole diplomatic thing. Would just be, yeah, we were memeing, we're still gonna kill it. Because that's just how Snuff rolls. And I gotta admit, I've got a lot of stuff. I've like Snuff may be a bunch of orphanage burners, but you gotta respect them. Like they they know how to make a good meme. Um, it, and the proof, like if you want proof of how good Snuffed Out are in terms of being memers, I mean, just go watch the last episode of Trash Talk Tuesday where Rye came in and basically renamed Redline to Sideline. So that was a pretty funny meme. I'm sorry, Redline, but it was funny. Um, so yeah, snuffed out came. They start off with killing the Sotio, but then they actually I think they had a 45. Okay, one thing happened first. You bitch. I love you too, Redline. Um, so I think how it went was, and someone feel free to correct me in chat if I'm wrong. Uh, but what had happened was someone came in. Well, Snuff initially came and said, "Hey, we're gonna shoot the Sodio." Then there was a 45 bill, or did they ransom the Keepstar? Someone in chat, did they ransom the Keepstar or the Sotio? I have no idea. Anyway, they came in, they killed the Sotio first. Actually, it's in my notes. Never mind. Okay, so Snuff came in. They tried to ransom the Sotio for 45 bill, but it turns out that that number was just a meme. And apparently they sent, and Snuff ended up sending their worst Reddit shit poster to then try and talk to Sixth Empire, or had them as the, as the contact for Sixth Empire, or no. Snuff listed or had their main diplomatic contact be their worst shit poster on Reddit. There you go. You see, English is hard only sometimes. Um, and yeah, and then they had no interest, which is probably why they had no interest in diploing, which is probably why Snuff actually sent their worst Reddit shit poster to essentially talk to. Yeah, I, you know what I mean. Um, yeah, so the Keepstar died. Everyone had good times. Apparently, like over 1,000 people showed up to defend the Keepstar, and the ships they're flying. There's a Drake Doctrine, and then there was a bunch of tornadoes. Which, from what Rye said, he said that it was just the most hodgepodge group of ships that he had ever seen. Like, you want to talk about bring whatever you want. This was bring whatever you want Keepstar Defense Edition. Oh, people showed up to defend the Soda. Okay, so it was the Sodio that they showed up in kitchen sink shit. But yeah, they didn't do much. Which, here's what I don't get: how is it that over 1,000 people showed up, even in kitchen sink shit, and weren't able to kill anything? Okay, so it was the tornadoes were on the Keepstar. Okay, but yeah, that's the one thing that I don't get is how did you show up in 1,000 plus ships and not manage to kill a single thing? That's what I want to know. Because like, if each ship can do at least 10 DPS, okay, that's at least 10,000 DPS, okay, and that's like, if your ship is only doing 10 DPS, first off, you have a problem. But still, like, what? How? How is it? Like, it's amazing that they weren't able to kill a single ship. Like, come on, guys. Like, that just. Anyway. Anyway, so yeah, that happened. Keepstar died, and it was high fives all around. Um, but actually, I wasn't gonna go anywhere with that. Anyway, so what also happened was we was in the war was a Keepstar died, and of course goons were busy holding the Pigeon when this Keepstar died, and it was the one Smeb Keepstar. However, so the biggest difference with the one Smeb Keepstar with all the other Keepstars is that Pappy took that shit seriously. Like, they essentially said, okay, we're going to make this a bitch and a half for the enemy. We're going to do everything in advance, and we're going to make it so that nobody's going to come in and stop us from killing this Keepstar. Now, the Keepstar was also uncored. So if a structure doesn't have a core, that essentially means that people on the structure cannot tether. Now, during a lot of the other Keepstar fights, goons made extensive use of tethering mechanics to essentially keep their ships invulnerable keep their titans invulnerable until they were essentially ready to fire. If you have an uncored structure, you can't actually do this. So it would have been very good for Pappy if they would have been able to essentially if Goons were to fight on the one SMEB Keepstar with their Titans would not have tether, and it would be quote unquote a true Titan fight. Um, and one side couldn't abuse tether mechanics, which honestly, like, so here's the thing, right? Like, when I think of abusing tether mechanics, actually no, I see tether mechanics give an advantage to the defender, which if the defender is defending like a Keepstar, like yeah, they should have an advantage. Like I'm sorry. Like they're defending, it's home field advantage. That just makes sense to me that they would have that kind of advantage. So I personally don't think that like I don't think there's such thing as abusing tether mechanics. Like you're attacking, you're defending a Keepstar, which is this massive installation. Like yeah, you're gonna have an advantage. Also, like Pappy's been fighting against tether mechanics for a really long time now, and if Pappy doesn't know how to essentially mitigate that advantage or how to fight past it by this point, like then they kind of deserve to lose. Like so, but yeah, so that happened. So yeah, the Keepstar died, and the Keepstar was uncontested. Now, how Pappy actually did this and how they made it sort of like a no fun. I like to call it a no fun kill because essentially Pappy did everything in their power to make it so that it would be uncontested. That and I don't know if Goons would have defended it anyway because again, gotta hold that pigeon. Which by the way, if someone in chat could actually like inform me of where the whole pigeon meme came from, like that, I would I would really appreciate that because I just heard it and I'm just like, okay, I don't get it, but I'm just gonna run with it. Which is like most of the memes that I feel like that Imperium Media has been basically peddling. Because I'm not gonna lie, like the Paspy one makes sense. Okay, the Paspy one makes. What's my character name? I'll message it to you later. But yeah, the Paspy one it makes sense. Like saying that Pappy's blue balling. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Tether Swarm Federation makes sense. Holding a pigeon. I not gonna lie, I don't really understand that. But yeah. Next thing. Oh, so another thing that happened was Legacy had a town hall, which this this I thought was actually pretty funny. Um, so anyone remember how how a lot of people in Pappy were making fun of goons for doing the war bonds? Well, apparently Test decided to start doing war bonds as well, which I'm just gonna come out here and say I have no problem with people doing war bonds. Like, okay, you're raising money to help a war effort. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, but yeah, apparently Test had actually pretty good success with its first wave of war bonds. Again, you can hear about this if you listen to the Test Soda, which I know which a lot of people might think was just a series of well, in actuality, it wasn't. I personally heard like it's weird. I didn't even hear very many of the ums and the uhs. Like I just heard a regular soda, so I don't really. I don't know. Like a lot of these, like there have been some really good memes during this war, but yeah, that was not one of them. Like all the Fountain Frank stuff, like that stuff's been high quality, but the whole the whole making fun of people's ability to speak to a crowd, like I just feel like that was low effort. Like you could have done something better, but nah. Anyway, what's next? So the next thing we're gonna talk about is the M2 breakout. Now uh, this is the thing that a lot of people probably originally wanted me to start with, but I had other topics, so but yeah, we're getting into it now. So if you've been living under a rock or you don't play EVE Online or any combination of the both, Pappy recently did this massive operation where they rage formed a metric gigafuck ton of ships, as well as dreads and carriers. I want to say they brought carriers in, but I'm not 100% sure. Um, But yeah, they rage formed a bunch of hacks and dreads and essentially went into M2 and started clearing off bubbles. Now, this had happened after Pappy had made an attempt to break out the dreads on top, or break out all the stuff on the top of the Keepstar, which they were sort of successful with, but they ended up not being. They were successful with it to a degree, but then they started losing supers left and right, and they were like, okay, we're gonna stop this. Now, one of the things that especially a lot of people on the Imperium side have been saying is like, well, why did they only log in one super at a time? And this is something where I actually have a little bit of insight. So the reasons for logging in one super at a time and extracting it that way is that, let's say a super logs in, all right, and then as a result, the Imperium just shoots all its DDs at said target, or it uses its lance DDs to lance the shit out of it, okay, and that super dies. Now imagine if they had logged in like 3 supers, all right, instead of just that one super dying, they would have lost 3. So I think that the idea was that if we log in one super at a time, if they were to use Lance DDs, we can only lose one super at a time. And if we get into a situation where, oh shit, all of our supers are dying, instead of losing that whole group of supers that logged in, they would only lose one. So I know people were, a little bit confused and were really ragging on Pappy for, only doing one super at a time and not giving goons the Titan fight they like quote unquote want. Well, that's because we don't need to lose. Like, yeah. So yeah, that was actually pretty smart. And again, it's just more denying them. It was the strategy went more for, we need to do this because it's the smart thing to do, instead of we're gonna do this because it's fun and we can get the big Titan fight that we want. Because let's be real, I think after M2, I'm pretty sure Pappy doesn't want to do doesn't want to do any real big Titan fights, at least until they have the vast majority of their Titan fleet out. Because right now, like, even if some Pappy members don't want to admit it, like, there are still 100 plus Titans trapped, and honestly, I don't think Pappy's really in the position of, hey, we need to take another Titan fight right now to get out all of our stuff, because it's essentially, why would you go into a fight with only 50% of your guys, or in this case like 70? Like, you don't go in at 70% strength. You want to be at 100% strength so that you can win. So yeah, did you just use? Yeah, I actually did just use Pappy and Smart in the same sentence. Kind of like I used Goon Swarm and Tether Swarm. Well, kind of like how Goon Swarm and Tether Swarm are synonymous. But yeah. So that happened. That was the precursor to Pappy trying to essentially. That was the precursor to Pappy breaking out all their Titans on the bottom. Now, something that was actually said, and this was talked about amongst the groups of Pappy that I know, was that after that sort of initial breakout attempt of the Titans above the Keepstar, a lot of people in Fleet were talking about, it's like, yeah, listen, that was great, but like, we really need to focus on the bottom, because that's where the vast majority of our supers are. So the next fleet, it was like, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to shoot down all the bubbles, and we're going to extract, which, come to think about it, during that second extract, they kind of just ignored the whole, like, hey, we're going to log in one super at a time, because they immediately were just like, okay, all Titans log the fuck in and start jumping out. I specifically remember going on that fleet, because, so what had happened was I had received pings for dreads and for, what was it? And for subcaps. Me being a pleb, I decided I didn't have my dread ready, which I actually got dread SRP'd like a couple of weeks ago, and it's still sitting in the system where it was contracted to me. So yeah, a bunch of fleets went up. We brought in our hacks, and essentially our job was to start killing bubbles. I wasn't on the initial wave. By the time I logged in, I started seeing supers jumping out and back in, which for me was that was pretty fun to watch. There's nothing like having your Titans and supers trapped in a system for a month and then logging in and seeing said Titans jump back. Like it was like, yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. And yeah, imagine not taking three to one fights and being called Tether Swarm. I mean, you guys are just letting Helm's Deep die right now, so I don't really know what that's all about. So I don't know. So, but yeah, that happened. Started seeing Titans jump in. I then went in myself, and the tie dye that I personally experienced in M2 during the breakout was, granted, my stuff still worked, but my, like, when I say stuff, I mean my modules. Like my modules still worked, but they only worked after I had like been constantly pressing the button and like making it go. Yeah. Yeah, no, it stuff worked only after I had basically mashed my button. And it was kind of interesting cuz like you had the fleet like 50k off of me at all times, even though I was like burning at maximum speed to try to catch up with them, but I never did. So I was like, okay, well this isn't gonna work. I'm gonna just shoot Titans, because at this time our dreads had already basically dropped, and we're shooting Titans. So I thought, okay, well I can't really I can't catch up to my fleet and be useful there, so I'll just whore on Titan kill mails. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm useless to the fleet, but I'm able to horn on a Titan kill mail. To me, that sounds like a win. Because in all honesty, it's not like me being 50 to 60k off the fleet and not getting the primaries in time. Like, at least I was shooting something. But anyway, so yeah, that happened, and Pappy was able to get out roughly, yeah, 100. Yeah, was able to get out over 100 of their Titans and Supers out, and it was high fives all around. However, and the victory in M2 does come with a big but, and that is the fact that in doing so, Pappy lost so many dreads. Like, oh my god. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if every single dread, now I know that every single dread that jumped in did not die, because I saw at least one dread make it out. I can't speak to the other 399, but I sure as shit know that at least one dread made it out. Which, I mean, I guess congratulations to that guy, which that actually brings up a point. So during that battle, one of my court members had actually logged into a carrier, but he was like at the bottom area of the bubbles where we weren't clearing them. So it essentially became a, oh god, he's logged in. Dude, you need to start boating like out of the bubbles right now, because there's no way we're going to get you, because by the time he had actually gotten home and logged in, the battle was almost over. So he starts boating down, and it's like, okay, and I mean, I don't know if like what kind of tie-dye he was experiencing, but he was definitely trying to get out of the bubbles. Like, I was watching him try to boat out, but it was a lost cause, and I felt super bad for the dude, because right after, like, as he's still boating down, all the fleets warp off and get out of Dodge, and he's just sitting there like what looks like 700 km away from the Keepstar. And again, this is just like eyeball math. I have no idea how far away he was from the Keepstar, but here he is trying to get out of the bubbles, and all of a sudden, just like a single lone interceptor just rockets its way down, tackles him, and then just the pain train of fighters and everything just come down at him, and it's just like, oh dude, RIP. And he lost his carrier, which he had been waiting about a month to get out. But he did get fully SRP'd, because if he didn't, that'd be kind of shitty. And yeah, but he did get SRP. And he's back in the fight now. So I guess still high fives all around. And except to, I guess, the people who didn't get out, which, I mean, RIP them. It was kind of short notice, which a lot of people have been giving Pappy shit for not pre-pinging the Titans. I'm going to make a case for not telling the Titans beforehand. And that case is the fact that there are spies all over Eve. The only way that Pappy could have been like 100% certain that spies weren't gonna, well, the only one of the ways that Pappy could have made it to where spies weren't gonna know is that they don't tell anyone beforehand, because that seems to be how, one, it makes it so that, okay, well, if nobody knows and if Titan level spies don't know, because I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least one Titan level spy in Pappy. Like, it just, how else are they going to get super pings unless they don't get our super pings, which I highly doubt. But yeah, yeah, that I guess that's the way that in my head I can sort of rationalize it, was that, okay, so if they don't tell any of the Titan pilots that, hey, or they don't send a ping out saying, hey, we're extracting Titans, until like the time where they're actually doing it, it basically sets into a situation where like goons can't like make preparations to stop Titans from getting out. It still brings that, it still has that whole like, okay, well, they might get Titans, they might try to get Titans out today, they might not. The fog of war is, it helps to preserve the fog of war. That's what I wanted to say. Probably should have said that sooner, but you know what? Better late than never. So yeah. Granted, it does really suck for those Titan pilots that didn't get out and then are gonna have to wait a little longer. Um, I wouldn't like, in the meme right now is that Pappy's just gonna let them sit and essentially get fucked. Um, but me personally, I don't think Pappy's gonna do that. I think that there is going to be something done. Granted, I don't know, because I can't believe I'm about to quote Brisk, but I'm just a line member. Um, so yeah, I'm not even a Titan level line member. Like, all I have is a carrier. Well, I have a dread, but I don't really count that because it's still sitting in the SRP staging. I think, I don't know, but yeah. Which, funnily enough, all those dreads that was actually lost. Pappy, I mean, all right. So here's the thing, right, Wormies? It's not that they don't trust their line members. It's just that there's this thing called compartmentalization. Like, you have to compartmentalize information so that it doesn't get out. Like, that's, yeah, like people, like goons do it all the time. Like, literally. So if you like, I listen to Goon Firesides regularly because you can view them online. And every single time there's at least one instance where the Matani was like, okay, we're not going to talk about that because future plans. Like, that's essentially what Pappy's doing, is like, hey, we're not going to tell you about future plans because it's called information security. Like, no alliances at this size can keep leaks. And what? Are Glitch, are you trying to say that no alliances of that size cannot keep all the leaks out? Because yeah, that's 100% true, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Like, if you just don't try to keep all the spies out and to keep all the information leaks out, like, then there's just no point. You might as well just invite them onto your server in comms and just be like, hey, we're about to shoot this guy, you should send all your reps. Like, yeah, it's useless. Like, yeah, you're never going to keep all the spies out, you're never going to keep all the leaks clogged, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. So yeah, I think most line members, okay, so Strapon makes a point in chat basically saying that most line members understand that goons aren't going to be removed from the game. Yeah, that's 100% true. And actually, that brings up another point where I think I've discovered the actual war goal. That being that, and this is what I gained from actually talking to my fellow court members, was that Pappy's goal isn't necessarily to exterminate goons. Like, if you actually think that, I'm sorry, but the whole like we're gonna exterminate goons, like, yes, that came from Villy's mouth, but Villy's also the person who told us to jump into M2. I'm sorry, but I had to meme. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is just it's just rhetoric to get people hyped up. Like, that's all it is. Like, I don't think any, again, the only people that I think really think that we're gonna exterminate goons from the game are the same people that shitpost in local and think that it's helping the war effort. Like, I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, so that happened. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, because we're actually starting to approach the end of the show here, is the M2 iHub. Now, recently the M2 iHub was resecured by Pappy, essentially resetting the SOV and all that stuff back to before M2, which for Pappy is huge. I talked to one of the PanFam fleet commanders, and he actually said that, yeah, the fact that goons didn't actually take more of a swing at the T5ZI Keepstar right after M2 was probably a huge mistake on their part. Which, again, I'm not an FC. I don't really know all that tactical shit. I can armchair Sky Marshal this shit all I want, which is pretty much exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, so that was his opinion, was that he should have done that. I don't really know if that's true, considering I really don't know the validity of that statement of they really needed to take on the Keepstar at M2 at T5ZI right after M2, because I mean, technically they did attack T5ZI. Granted, they didn't really commit as much as probably they should have, but they did try to attack it, and they got their asses kicked multiple times. So yeah, so basically what happened in M2 was that Pappy managed to take back the iHub, and in doing so, like, they were able to inflict 170 billion worth of losses onto the Imperium, and then later that night, and this is the same day, they were able to inflict another 180 billion later, which is, it's pretty huge. So yeah, goons then reinforced it again, but Pappy was able to defend it. Now, and they reinforced it like right after we had taken it. But again, Pappy was able to take it back. So yeah, that's pretty much what's been happening. The only commentary I really have on that is that I was at the M2 fight, and it essentially consisted of me camping a gate, because what Pappy had done, and this is in my mind another example of Pappy actually like learning from their mistakes, which I know, right? People learn from their mistakes. It's such a weird concept. But essentially what they had done is they had assigned each hack fleet to their own system, and that hack fleet's one job was to essentially defend toasters and to defend iHub toasters that were essentially shooting the node in that system. And the system that I was assigned to was ZXB. And essentially what we ended up doing was just sitting there on a gate and doing nothing, which kind of sucked, because here I am in comms listening to the FC call targets and call primaries and them getting kills. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in T5ZI, not T5ZI, but ZXB, just camping a gate and hearing all my friends have fun. It's like, wow, guys, I really wish I would have been on that fleet, but no, I had to join one of the overflow fleets. Which, by the way, I gotta say, the Pappy Assembled Discord, thank God we actually finally decided to, well, thank God we actually used that, or no, thank God we made it, because that thing has come in so useful. Like, I will say this till the day I die. Why we didn't establish and make a Discord that was essentially Pappy Assemble, before, like right when the war started, I will never know because that would have come in so handy. Granted, we might not have had the IT set up for it, but like still, that should have been like the number one priority right at the start of the war. Like none of this whole like okay, split comms, split all this stuff. Nah. We needed that at the beginning of the war so that you could have all the random people who weren't able to get into their alliance fleets get into fleets and still help. So, thank God, and that has been coming in extremely handy. I personally have been on quite a few fleets through the Pappy Assemble Discord, and it's actually pretty fun to be in fleets with like different test people. I remember I was actually in an NC fleet during a dread fight. I believe it was the fight when Imperium lost a bunch. There have been so many fights over the past 2 weeks where Imperium has just ended up losing a bunch of dreads that it's I don't know. It's a blur at this point. But I actually got to be in fleet with Redline, and that was a fun experience. Granted, it was quite a bit of talking shit, but it was still fun. Um, so yeah. Any other topics? No, I think that about wraps it up. Um, Let me check chat. How did? Oh, what was the outcome? Nix. The outcome was so when I last checked, Pappy had won all the iHubs and there was two of them still being contested. So either way, Pappy did get a victory. Whether or not they got the two iHubs, I have no idea. So yep, I think that about wraps everything up. Guys, remember if you have any channel points, please donate them to the webcam Trash Talk Tuesday. We are at. Let me actually check. We are 10%. We've raised 10%. And we've only got 19 days left, guys. So remember. Yeah, is Pappy's Don Rhea Redline? Nope, just me. But yeah. That pretty much covers up my final thoughts. Oh, okay, there it goes. Dex said 7-1 in total. So yeah, that's actually how many? Yeah, 7. So, yeah, seven victories for Pappy today. Pretty good. We can still build our own supers from harvested resource in our home space. Well, I mean, you really don't have much home space left, so. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could build them in 1DQ1 harem, but if you're really building everything in 1DQ1, then the just the sheer like industry index modifier. Oh yeah, the index cost modifier. I think I don't know. It's something industry cost modifier must be fucking huge because like if the entirety of Imperium is building everything in 1DQ, holy crap, that thing's gonna fucking skyrocket. Which I mean is good too. So, but yeah, that about wraps up the show. Yeah. Anyway, guys, it's been fun. I'll see you guys next time, and don't forget, always bubble wrap your Keepstars. I'll see you guys next time.